Close your eyes, if you wish, and let the world around you soften. Picture yourself settling into a quiet moment, the weight of the day easing as you breathe deeply. Tonight, we're stepping into the restless pulse of 1970s America, a time of wide collars and diner coffee, but also a time shadowed by hidden dangers. This is True Crime for Sleep, where we weave stories of the past with a gentle hand, guiding you through lives, mysteries, and contrasts of a world long gone. Our journey centers on Ted Bundy, a man whose charm concealed a darkness that still unsettles us. Hey everyone, welcome back to Mr. Sleepy Crime. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, but only if this genuinely helps you fall asleep, and let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from today. We love hearing from you. It fascinates us as how many of you are tuning in from around the world. Imagine yourself in the summer of 1974, standing on a cracked sidewalk in Seattle, the air heavy with the scent of pine and distant rain. Cars rumble past, their chrome bumpers catching the light, and the faint hum of a radio drifts from a nearby diner, playing a tune you almost recognize. You're young, perhaps a little lost, searching for purpose in a decade that feels both free and uncertain. Then you meet him, Ted Bundy. His smile is warm, his words polished, his eyes holding a spark that makes you feel seen. He's a law student, he says, someone with big plans, and he needs your help with something small, something simple. Favor, really. You don't know it yet, but you've just stepped into a shadow you may never escape. As his accomplice, your life would no longer be your own. Picture yourself behind the wheel of a borrowed car, its vinyl seats sticking to your skin in the humid evening air. The dashboard clock ticks too loudly, each second a reminder of the task at hand. Ted's instructions are clear. Wait here, watch the street, be ready to drive. The streetlights cast long, wavering shadows, and every passing figure feels like a threat. A police officer, a witness, someone who might notice the tremor in your hands. You're not committing the crimes, not directly, but you're complicit, tangled in a web spun by a man whose charm masks something colder. The weight of it presses on your chest, a constant struggle to breathe normally, to act as if the world hasn't shifted beneath you. The task starts small. Maybe you're asked to carry a bag to a secluded spot, its contents heavy and unfamiliar, the canvas rough against your palms. The forest trail you walk smells of damp earth and cedar, but each rustle in the underbrush sends your heart racing. You don't ask what's in the bag. Not because you don't want to know, but because asking feels like crossing a line you can't uncross. Or perhaps you're told to stand outside a bar, watching for anyone who might notice Ted's Volkswagen Beetle idling nearby. The neon sign above casts a red glow over the gravel lot, and you feel the eyes of strangers even when no one's there. The paranoia creeps in, slow but relentless, like a fog rolling over a lake. You start to notice every detail, the way a curtain twitches in a window, the sound of footsteps that might not even exist. Ted's presence is both a comfort and a cage. When he speaks, his voice is smooth, reassuring, like a friend sharing a secret over coffee. But there's an edge beneath it, a sharpness that surfaces when you hesitate or question him. Imagine sitting across from him in a dimly lit diner, the air thick with the smell of fried onions and stale cigarettes. He leans forward, his eyes locked on yours, and explains why you can't back out now. You're in too deep, he says, not with anger, but with a quiet certainty that chills you more than any threat. You realize then that he knows you, your fears, your weaknesses, the reasons you said yes in the first place. He's studied you, just as he studies everyone, and that knowledge binds you to him like a chain. The exhaustion settles in quickly. Sleep becomes a stranger, replaced by nights spent staring at the ceiling of a cheap motel room, the neon sign outside blinking through thin curtains. You replay every moment, Every drive, every errand, every glance you exchanged with someone who might remember your face. The fear isn't just of being caught, it's of Ted himself. His temper is unpredictable, a storm that brews without warning. One moment, he's laughing, charming a waitress into a smile. The next, his jaw tightens, and his voice drops to a whisper that makes your skin crawl. You've heard stories, whispers of lives cut short, of disappearances that linger in the papers, but you push them down, telling yourself you're different, you're just helping, you're not like him. But the lie grows heavier with every task, every day spent in his shadow. And then there's the moral decay, the slow erosion of who you thought you were. Each choice you make, each time you drive away, each time you stay silent, chips away at something inside you. You start to see the world differently. The young woman walking alone at dusk isn't just a stranger anymore. She's a potential target, a risk, a reason to look away. You hate yourself for noticing, for thinking like him, even for a moment. The guilt is a constant companion, heavier than the bags you carry, sharper than the fear of sirens in the distance. You imagine confessing, turning yourself in, but the thought of facing Ted's reaction stops you cold. He's not just a man. He's a force, a presence that fills every room, every thought, until there's no space left for you. The rhythm of this life is relentless. There's no rest, no moment where you can let your guard down. Even when you're alone, you're not free. You check the locks twice, then 3 times, convinced someone's watching. The newspapers pile up on the table, their headlines screaming about missing women, and you can't bring yourself to read them. You're trapped not just by Ted, but by the choices that led you here, the need for belonging, the allure of his confidence, the promise of something more. And yet, as the days blur together, you realize the truth. You wouldn't last a day longer. The weight of his world, the constant struggle to stay one step ahead, would break you. You'd run, or you'd crumble, or you'd be caught, but you wouldn't survive it. As we leave this imagined life behind, let's step back and look at the man himself, the one who could pull you into such a world with nothing more than a smile. Ted Bundy wasn't just a predator. He was a puzzle, a man who wore his charm like a mask. Let's explore his story next, tracing the path from a seemingly ordinary life to a darkness that still echoes today. Imagine yourself walking through a quiet university campus in the early 1970s. The air crisp with the scent of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke. Students pass by, their voices blending with the rustle of notebooks, their lives full of ambition and promise. Among them is a young man, neatly dressed, his dark hair combed, his smile disarming. To the world, he's Theodore Robert Bundy, a law student with a bright future, a man who moves effortlessly through the rhythm of daily life. But beneath this polished exterior lies a shadow, one that grows darker with each passing year. Tonight, let's trace the arc of Ted Bundy's life, not to unsettle, but to understand the man who became an enigma, a figure whose duality lingers in our collective memory. Ted Bundy was born in 1946 in Burlington, Vermont, in a world still settling after the upheaval of war. Picture a small house, its paint weathered by New England winters, the air inside carrying the faint aroma of boiled coffee and old wood. His early years were marked by uncertainty. Raised by his grandparents, told his mother was his sister, a secret that shaped his sense of self in ways no one could foresee. As a boy, Ted was quiet, observant, his intelligence sharp but unremarkable. Neighbors might recall him as polite, perhaps a little reserved, the kind of child who blended into the hum of a bustling neighborhood. Yet there were hints, even then, of something unsettled, a curiosity that lingered too long on the edges of the ordinary, a fascination with the forbidden that went unnoticed by those around him. By his 20s, Ted had crafted a persona that was almost flawless. Picture him striding through the University of Washington campus in Seattle, his briefcase swinging lightly, his tie perfectly knotted. He was charming, articulate, the kind of man who could hold a room with a story or a smile. He studied psychology, then law, his ambition painting a picture of a life on the rise. He volunteered at a crisis hotline, his voice soothing callers through their darkest moments. A strange irony given the path he'd soon take. He worked on political campaigns, mingled at cocktail parties, and moved through academic halls with ease. To those who knew him, he was a friend, a colleague, a man who seemed destined for greatness. But this was only one side of Ted Bundy, the mask he wore with practiced grace. The other side emerged in the shadows, in moments no one could witness. By 1974, the rhythm of his life had shifted, though the world wouldn't know it yet. Picture a quiet lakeside park at dusk, the water reflecting the last glimmers of sunlight, the air cool with the promise of night. A young woman walks alone, her footsteps soft on the gravel path. Ted approaches, his voice calm, his story practiced. A lost student needing directions, a man with a broken arm needing help with his car. His charm disarms, his words weave a net, and by the time suspicion stirs, it's too late. Lives were lost, not with fanfare, but with a quiet, methodical precision that left communities reeling. The papers began to whisper of missing women, of patterns no one could yet connect, as fear crept into the daily lives of those who once felt safe. Bundy's methods were calculated, his movements deliberate. He studied his surroundings, choosing places where the rhythm of daily life provided cover. College campuses, ski resorts, crowded beaches. He understood trust, how to earn it, how to exploit it. Imagine him driving through the Pacific Northwest, his Volkswagen Beetle humming along winding roads, the car's interior smelling of leather and gasoline. Its tan upholstery unremarkable, a perfect disguise for a man who thrived on being unnoticed. He was patient, meticulous, his mind always a step ahead, weaving a web that ensnared not just his victims, but the authorities who chased him. His crimes were not impulsive. They were planned, rehearsed, a dark routine that became as much a part of his life as his public persona. His crimes spanned states, Washington, Oregon, Utah, Colorado, each move a step further into a life he could no longer escape. By 1975, the mask began to slip. Picture a highway at night in Utah, the air sharp with the scent of sagebrush, the stars bright above a lonely stretch of road. A patrol car's lights flash in the rearview mirror, and Ted's car is pulled over for a routine stop. Inside, officers find a collection of items: handcuffs, a ski mask, a crowbar, that hint at something darker. He was arrested, his charm faltering under scrutiny, but he didn't break. Instead, he escaped, not once, but twice, slipping through the cracks of a system unprepared for his cunning. The first escape came in 1977, from a Colorado courthouse, a bold move in the crisp mountain air, the scent of pine heavy around him. For 6 days, he was a ghost, vanishing into the wilderness before being recaptured. His second escape later that year was even more audacious. Picture a jail cell, its walls cold and gray, the air stale with the scent of metal and dust. Ted climbed through the ceiling, a calculated act of defiance, and made his way south to Florida. There, in 1978, the rhythm of his life reached its peak and its end. The Chi Omega sorority house in Tallahassee, a place of laughter and sisterhood, became a stage for his darkest acts, though we'll explore that mystery in more detail soon. By February 1978, he was captured for the last time, his name now synonymous with a terror that had haunted a nation. His trials became a spectacle, his charm still evident as he represented himself in court. But the weight of his actions could no longer be hidden. What made Ted Bundy so chilling was not just his actions, but the contrast he audaciously embodied. He was the man you'd trust to walk you home, the colleague you'd share a laugh with, the student you'd admire for his drive. Yet he was also the shadow in the dusk, the figure who turned trust into a weapon. His life was a constant struggle between these two selves, a duality that fooled the world until it couldn't. As we leave his story for now, let's turn to one of the mysteries that lingers in his wake. A case that still raises questions, still whispers of secrets yet to be uncovered. Picture yourself in Tallahassee, Florida, in the early hours of January 15th, 1978. The night is cool, the air carrying the faint scent of magnolia blossoms and damp grass. The Chi Omega sorority house stands quietly on the edge of the Florida State University campus, its windows glowing softly against the dark. Inside, young women sleep, their lives woven into the rhythm of college life. Late-night study sessions, shared laughter, the hum of a record player left on too long. This is a place of community, of dreams, of safety. But on this night, that safety is shattered, and a mystery begins that lingers even now, its questions unanswered, its shadows long. Tonight, let's step carefully into the unresolved corners of the Chi Omega case, not to disturb, but to explore the ambiguities that still whisper through time. By 1978, Ted Bundy was a fugitive, a man on the run after his audacious escape from a Colorado jail. He had arrived in Florida, blending into the transient pulse of a college town, his charm still a mask he wore with ease. The Chi Omega attack was swift, devastating, a moment where lives were forever altered. In the early morning hours, an intruder entered the sorority house, moving through its darkened halls. The aftermath left 2 young women lost, their futures stolen, and 2 others gravely injured. Their lives changed in ways no one could have foreseen. Bundy was later convicted for these acts, his presence confirmed by physical evidence, a bite mark, a rare and chilling clue that tied him to the scene. Yet, even with his conviction, questions remain, like threads left unknotted, tugging at the edges of the story. Imagine standing outside the sorority house as dawn breaks, the air heavy with the scent of dew and distant pine. Police cars line the street, their lights casting long shadows across the lawn. Inside, investigators move carefully, their footsteps muffled on the carpeted floors, collecting fragments of a night that defies understanding. The evidence is compelling but incomplete. The bite mark, preserved on one of the victims, was a breakthrough, its unique pattern a silent witness to Bundy's presence. But other details raised doubts. Witnesses reported seeing a man lingering near the house earlier that evening. His description vague, his role unclear. Was he alone? Could someone else have been involved, even peripherally, a lookout, a driver, someone drawn into Bundy's orbit as you imagine yourself in our first segment? The idea of an accomplice lingers, not as a certainty, but as a question that refuses to fade. Forensic science in 1978 was meticulous but limited, its tools not yet sharpened by the decades that followed. Picture the investigators hunched over tables in a dimly lit lab, the air thick with the smell of chemicals and old paper. They examine fibers, hair, traces of blood, each piece a puzzle that doesn't quite fit. Some evidence points squarely at Bundy, his movements, his methods, the items found in his possession. But other pieces are less certain. A footprint near the house doesn't match his shoes. A timeline that feels too tight for one person to accomplish alone. These discrepancies, small but persistent, fuel speculation that someone else might have played a role, perhaps unknowingly, perhaps unwillingly. No accomplice was ever identified, no second suspect charged, but the possibility hangs in the air, a quiet mystery that invites curiosity without demanding answers. Then there's the question of unreported victims, a shadow that stretches beyond the sorority house. In the weeks following the attack, other disappearances in the area were noted, their connections to Bundy uncertain. Imagine a small-town police station, its walls lined with missing persons flyers, the air heavy with the scent of ink and coffee. Detectives pore over reports, trying to link cases that feel too similar to ignore, yet too vague to confirm. Some believe Bundy's time in Florida was more chaotic than his earlier crimes, his control slipping as the net closed in. Could there have been others, lives lost in the margins of his spree, undocumented in the chaos of his final days as a fugitive? The records offer no clarity, only silence, a reminder of how much remains unknown. The Chi Omega case also drew a different kind of attention, one that adds another layer to its mystery. As Bundy's trial unfolded, a strange subculture emerged. People, often young women, who were captivated by him, drawn to his charisma even as his crimes were laid bare. Picture a courtroom in 1979, the air thick with the smell of polished wood and nervous anticipation. Spectators fill the benches, some clutching newspapers, others whispering among themselves. Among them are those who came not to judge, but to watch, their fascination a puzzle in itself. They wrote him letters, attended every hearing, their presence a quiet contrast to the grief of those who had lost so much. This phenomenon, unsettling yet real, speaks to Bundy's ability to manipulate, to cast a spell even from behind bars. It's a reminder of the power he wielded, not just over his victims, but over those who saw him as something more than a monster. The trial itself was a spectacle, though we'll keep our focus on the mystery rather than the drama. Bundy, ever the performer, represented himself, his voice smooth as he questioned witnesses, his charm a stark contrast to the evidence presented. But the questions about Chi Omega persisted. Why did some survivors recall details that didn't align perfectly with the timeline? Could the chaos of that night have obscured other truths? These uncertainties don't diminish the tragedy, but they add a layer of intrigue, a sense that the full story may never be known. The house itself, now long changed, still stands in Tallahassee, a quiet monument to a night that altered countless lives. As we step away from this mystery, let's turn to a different facet of Bundy's world, one that contrasts his solitary chaos with the structured lives of others who operated in the shadows. His path briefly crossed with a different kind of criminal, men whose lives were governed by codes and hierarchies, a world as foreign to Bundy as his was to them. Let's explore that contrast next, stepping into the lives of the elite criminals he encountered on the run. Picture yourself in a dimly lit bar in Miami, Florida, in early 1978. The air is warm, heavy with the scent of salt water from the nearby coast and the faint tang of spilled beer on the wooden floor. The jukebox hums in the corner, its neon glow casting a soft light over patrons who speak in low tones, their conversations blending into the rhythm of a city that never quite sleeps. You're a stranger here, unnoticed, watching a man at a corner table. He's Ted Bundy, a fugitive on the run, his once polished appearance now frayed at the edges, his hair slightly unkempt, his eyes scanning the room. But he's not alone. Across from him sits a different kind of figure, someone whose world operates by rules and codes far removed from Bundy's chaos. Tonight, let's step into the contrasting world of the elite criminals Bundy briefly crossed paths with, a glimpse into a structured underworld that stood in stark contrast to his solitary darkness. By 1978, Ted Bundy was a man unraveling, his carefully crafted mask slipping as he fled south after his second escape from custody. Florida, with its sprawling coastlines and transient crowds, offered a temporary haven. But survival required resources, money, connections, a place to hide. In his desperation, Bundy brushed against the edges of organized crime, a world of drug smugglers, racketeers, and kingpins who thrived in the 1970s. These were not the impulsive predators of Bundy's ilk, but men who built empires with precision, their lives a careful balance of risk and reward. Imagine a waterfront mansion, its white stucco walls gleaming under the Florida sun, the air inside cool with the hum of air conditioning and the scent of expensive cologne. This was the world of the elite criminals, a place where power was measured not in chaos, but in control. These crime lords operated with a discipline that Bundy could never master. Picture a dock at midnight, the water lapping gently against the hull of a sleek boat, its deck stacked with carefully concealed packages. The men who worked these routes were not lone wolves. They were part of a network, a hierarchy where loyalty was currency and betrayal was unthinkable. Their operations were meticulous, routes planned to evade Coast Guard patrols, payments delivered in briefcases that smelled of leather and ink, meetings held in back rooms where the air was thick with cigar smoke and whispered deals. Unlike Bundy, whose crimes were driven by compulsion, these men treated crime as a business, their every move calculated to protect their wealth and influence. Bundy's encounters with this world were fleeting, born of necessity rather than alliance. Imagine him in a crowded bar, the kind where the bartender knows not to ask questions. He's low on cash, his stolen credit cards no longer enough to sustain him. He approaches a contact, perhaps a low-level smuggler, someone who knows the right people. The man across the table is different. His suit tailored, his watch glinting under the dim lights, his voice calm but firm. He's part of a machine, a system where every player has a role, from the runners who move product to the bosses who never touch it. Bundy, with his erratic methods and unpredictable nature, is an outsider here, a risk no one wants to take. His charm, so effective in other settings, feels out of place, like a mismatched key in a well-oiled lock. The contrast between Bundy and these criminals is stark. Where Bundy was solitary, they were connected, their lives intertwined with partners, families, and communities who depended on their success. Picture a dinner party at a smuggler's home, the table set with crystal and silver, the air rich with the scent of roasted meat and tropical flowers. Laughter fills the room, but beneath it lies a tension, a constant awareness of the law's shadow. These men lived lavishly, their wealth evident in the cars parked outside. Sleek Cadillacs and Lincolns, their chrome polished to a mirror shine. Yet their lives were governed by rules, by a code that demanded loyalty and silence. Bundy, with his reckless impulsivity, could never fit into this world. His crimes left trails, witnesses, evidence, headlines, while these men worked to leave none. Bundy's brief intersections with this underworld likely came through small transactions. A stolen car traded for cash, a favor exchanged for a place to lie low. But his chaotic nature made him a liability. Imagine a meeting in a back alley, the air damp with the scent of rain and rotting fruit, the only light coming from a flickering street lamp. Bundy stands there, his hands in his pockets, trying to negotiate with a man who sees through his charm. The smuggler's eyes are cold, assessing, weighing the risk of dealing with a man who leaves bodies in his wake. For these criminals, survival meant control, discretion, a life lived in the shadows but never fully exposed. Bundy's path was the opposite, each act bolder, each escape more desperate, until the world could no longer ignore him. This contrast reveals the fragility of Bundy's world, where the elite criminals built structures to protect themselves, networks of trust, layers of insulation. Bundy relied on his own cunning, a solitary figure whose only constant was himself. His brief encounters with organized crime were not partnerships, but moments of necessity, a fugitive grasping at straws in a world that operated by rules he couldn't follow. The lavish homes, the disciplined operations, the The quiet power of these men stood in opposition to Bundy's unraveling life, a reminder that even in the shadows, there are different ways to exist. As we leave this world behind, let's reflect on the journey we've taken, through the paranoia of an accomplice's life, the duality of Bundy's own story, the lingering questions of Chi Omega, and now the structured empire of the criminals he briefly met. These threads weave a tapestry of a time long past, a world of contrasts and secrets. As you drift toward rest, imagine yourself far from that era, safe in the quiet of now, where the past is just a story, a whisper to carry you gently into sleep. Imagine yourself now, far from the restless streets of 1970s America, resting in the quiet of your own space. The air is soft, carrying the faint scent of your surroundings, perhaps the clean linen of your bed, or the lingering warmth of a candle just extinguished. The world we've explored tonight feels distant, its shadows and secrets belonging to a time long past. We've walked through the imagined life of Ted Bundy's accomplice, where paranoia and guilt wove a heavy burden. We've traced Bundy's own journey, a man whose charm hid a darkness that unraveled lives. We've lingered in the unanswered questions of the Chi Omega tragedy, where mysteries still whisper in the corners of history. And we've stepped into the structured world of elite criminals, whose disciplined empires stood in stark contrast to Bundy's chaos. Each story, each moment, reveals a truth about that era. A time when trust could be a trap, when safety was never certain, when the rhythm of daily life could shift in an instant. Yet, as you lie here now, those struggles feel far away, their weight softened by the passage of time. The constant tension of an accomplice's life, the duality of a predator, the unresolved grief of a sorority house, the calculated power of crime lords. All these are echoes, stories to carry you gently into reflection. They remind us how fragile trust can be, how complex the human heart, and how the past shapes the peace we find today. Let your mind drift, if you wish, letting go of the shadows we've explored. Picture the world outside your window, quiet and still, the stars above a reminder of the distance between then and now. You're safe here, wrapped in the comfort of the present, where the past is just a tale told in a soothing voice. As you settle deeper, let the rhythm of these words fade, carrying you toward rest, toward dreams, toward the gentle embrace of sleep. Good night.